Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler. Today we are attending a press junket to discuss the number 6 film on the 50 best rom-coms list, Notting Hill. I'm welcoming in first-time guest and longtime friend / mentor, Robin Creasman. How are you doing?
Hey, buddy. How you doing, Nathan? Man, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, this is great. So I've known Robin for a long time because he essentially gave me my first, I always say my real job in the film and media production area when I was fresh out of college. I was in my hometown of Longview, and he got me out into the world of DFW and heavy traffic and all that good stuff. And I learned so much about the business, about editing, work ethic, all that. Unknowingly at the time, I also learned what it's like to be a dad in a house full of girls. And so you gave me a lot of experience that way too. So it's funny to look back now to go like, wow, that was really training me for a lot of things. I didn't even know it.
It was great days, man. That was fun. And let me tell you, you were awesome. You were the best. A quick story, just so everyone will know how diligent Nathan is and was. I put a request for resumes out, and I asked 5 questions for everyone to fill out the information. And the goal of that was to see how diligent these people were, how focused on details, if they would actually fill out the questions. And out of about 15 resumes I got, Nathan was the only one that actually filled out all that information. So I didn't care what he looked like, what he did, how good he was. I was going to hire that guy. No,
Yeah.
Just kidding. Because his demo reels were awesome, and he was the best. We had a blast for a number of years, and we welcomed him into our family because we had a casita that we had our office in, and so he was around the house a lot, and he was family, still is.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that. Well, before we jump into this wonderful movie, I want people to hear a little bit about your background and what you do. And it's funny that we've talked about this movie, and we'll talk about it later, because I think it kind of maybe ties into some of your past experience.
Well, yeah, as in yours as well. Long story short, I've been around a long time, but I started out in music, played music full time in a band in Dallas, and we happened to be very popular in Dallas. Won the best rock band 3 years in a row. Got on Star Search back in the day with Ed McMahon's TV show. Lost $100,000 to Sawyer Brown. Signed a record deal with USA Records. And then I went into the Christian music record business later as a marketing director because we never quite made it over the regional hump in the band, but we were played full time for 5 years. Marketing director for our division of Word Records for 3.5 years, and moved into television. A mentor of mine brought me in, like I brought Nathan in, and said, I'm going to show you what the ropes, teach you what you need to know. And I was with him for 17 years. And over those years of time, we ended up having over 300 hours of broadcast television. Mostly it was in docu-reality series, a lot of music documentaries, and we interviewed about 78, 79 real rock stars and telling stories of a series called Full Access on Tour, a behind the scenes look at country music artists on the road. We did documentaries that we won for Decca Records on the life of Buddy Holly that we went and interviewed. There are 19 artists that were on this tribute album, and all these various artists and band members that we got to interview them while they were recording their records. And later on went and did a series called Troubadour Texas on the CW network that was 22 episode, 1 hour episodes, and showcasing up and coming singer-songwriters in Texas, and then some fishing shows, some travel shows, did a lot of NASCAR. Jeff Gordon was part of our little company. We had a side division with him and got to do his biography. He's the 3rd winningest NASCAR driver in NASCAR, and then did the year in review for ESPN for NASCAR 3 years in a row, and then the first special for NBC behind the scenes that look at NASCAR. So tons of athletes, and Terry Bradshaw, we did a hosting show for us for the comedians of the world. It's just a lot of fun, and getting to see behind the scenes, look at what those artists really are like, and those stars were like. So that was very positive. And then after TNN was sold, which we did a lot of country music stuff, and ESPN lost the contract of NASCAR to NBC, and our kind of bread and butter went away. I moved into my second client after a Billy Graham special that I did, or a docu-reality series for on Sunrise of Christianity, talking about kind of a tourism for going to the Holy Lands, which was a side project. But my first project on my own was for the International Speakers Bureau to do an event for them. And then they introduced to me all these professional speakers that they represented to get bookings, and they needed video production and coaching from that. And that's when I started my own little division of my own company. And Nathan came in and joined me. And oh my goodness, how many speaker videos did we produce?
A
A
lot.
lot, a lot, a lot. And then that led to me coaching speakers, and then led to me getting asked to come speak to chapters. And then I got to speak for the national convention, and they called me the Rockstar speaker because I had an acronym, Rockstar, ROCKSTAR, talking about success principles from the world of music and television. And that kicked off a whole career in doing that. And that's kind of what I've ended up doing, then jumping back and forth into TV a couple of times over the last 10 or 15 years. And so music, entertainment, and speaking has been pretty much my whole world.
Yeah, the irony is that we would take these hour-long speeches and try to package them and dwindle them down, to like 5 to 8 minutes. And now I'm doing a podcast that is long form, and you're not supposed to cut anything. So it's fun. It's funny how things go in a circle and in a cycle.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, those were fun days, man. You were really, really good, buddy. Really good. And I still have speaker friends ask about you.
Oh, well,
Seriously.
that's nice of them. Yeah, no, I still follow them, so I probably see more of their stuff than they actually realize. So,
true. And
yeah.
we've got 17 speakers in the Hall of Fame, Speaker Hall of Fame.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
That is bizarre. Well, we'll jump into this movie. We'll grab our travel books and let's venture into the land of Notting Hill.
Anna Scott is the most famous actress on earth.
Oh, she's great. I have loved her. I love her smile.
I'd say she's the most beautiful woman on the planet.
Will Thacker is the least successful shopkeeper in Notting Hill.
Do you have any books by Dickens?
We're a travel book shop. We only sell travel books.
How about the new John Grisham thriller?
That's a novel too, isn't it?
They're worlds apart.
There's something wrong with this yogurt.
It's mayonnaise.
There we are then.
But only a moment away from destiny.
Notting Hill is a 1999 romantic comedy film directed by Roger Michell. The screenplay was written by Richard Curtis. It stars Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant, with Rhys Ifans, Emma Chambers, Tim McInerney, Gina McKee, and Hugh Bonneville in supporting roles. Hopefully I pronounced all those correctly, but the story is of a romance between a British bookseller, Hugh Grant, and a famous American actress played by Julia Roberts, who happens to walk into his shop in London's Notting Hill district. Released on May 21st, 1999, Notting Hill was well received by critics and became the highest grossing British film of all time. At the 57th Golden Globe Awards, the film received 3 nominations: Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy Actress for Roberts, and then Best Actor for Grant. It also earned 2 BAFTA nominations and won a British Comedy Award and a Brit Award for its soundtrack. So, Robin, I kind of laughed. It is funny. I don't think we ever really taught movies so much because your life, especially like as you mentioned, when I came to work for you, you had 2 young children at the time, a busy life, your own business, working hard. I was just a single guy that would come in and work for you and then go home and I guess watch a bunch of movies. So I remember us basically talking a lot about American Idol and the show 24 with Keith Sutherland. And so anyway, you just made a kind of reference before we started recording that this is a movie that you've seen a couple of times before. So had it been a while since you had seen this movie?
Yes, it had. You mentioned 1999, and our Emma, my youngest, was about 3 years old at the time. Caroline, my oldest, was about 6 or 7 at the time. So we didn't really see it initially, I don't think, until probably 81, maybe. I mean, no, 2001 possibly.
Yeah.
But we've seen it about 3 or 4 times over this duration of time. I love the movie. It's a cute movie. I think, both characters, all the whole ensemble cast were awesome. I love the idea of it. So we've been a fan of it. I liked it. And then we watched it. My youngest daughter, Emma, and she lives in nearby us. She came over. We watched it last week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And it's just a good, fresh refresher. It's cute.
Yeah, I would say maybe minus the music, and I'm sure I'm not a fashion guru, and so I'm sure there's some, outfits and the designs in there that have might age a little bit. But honestly, I feel like you could throw this movie on now, and if someone didn't know it was from '99, I would say probably save maybe some of the songs in it. I mean, it really holds up. It didn't feel like it was a movie that's over 20 years old.
Absolutely. I mean, everything about it. I mean, it's first class from, obviously with the award that it had, but even with the music, there are a lot of movies today that still go back to, the classic of 80s and 70s and, even 90s stuff that's relevant as far as stuff. But you're right. I think you've got quality actors and the photography, everything about it. The scripting, the writing was very pithy and very intriguing. And it was just, very detailed, the minutiae of some of what they were doing, very descriptive. It was a very engaging movie. I think anyone would enjoy it if you watched it today and you've never seen it before.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've been watching all these romantic comedies along with my podcast and listening to every episode. But I will
Every
say
day.
Yeah, every day. Yeah. I was quite taken by this movie. I've seen it. I've seen it a couple of times, probably like early on in college. So, because when I was in college is kind of when DVDs came out or really starting to get popular. So that was something that was really common in dorm rooms and stuff like that. So I feel like that's when I saw it the most. So it's been a while, but especially we're not quite halfway through the list. But I mean, after we finished watching it, I was like, I really love this movie. And I didn't know actually where it fell on the list, and when I saw that it was number 6, I was like, oh, okay, so it's held in pretty high esteem. But I really loved it. I just kind of loved everything about this movie. I think the screenplay really stands out, and it's just kind of ironic that the film that we covered before this is 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and it just kind of worked out scheduling wise. I didn't mean to necessarily do another Hugh Grant movie, but also Richard Curtis wrote the screenplay for this movie and 4 Weddings. And so especially seeing that 4 Weddings, listen to that podcast, we kind of dissect it now. You can really see how Richard Curtis has grown as a screenplay writer from this movie. And then also the performance of Hugh Grant, because I think Hugh Grant probably gets pegged with, playing somewhat the same kind of role as, a real handsome guy, but he's very, he doesn't have confidence and he kind of bumbles. And I think this performance is actually, even though he still has those characteristics, I think it's a little bit more reined in some of his like work prior to this movie. But I think also just being a big movie fan, kind of how it gives you a little, behind the scenes peek at the industry and Julia Roberts, being this huge celebrity. And so I think it's also a very, very, I appreciated the patience of the movie and the scenes. Like, I don't know if you picked up just and how the two talk to each other. I mean, they really there's a lot of pauses, not awkward, but they really do feel like real conversations.
I totally agree. Authentic kept coming up as we were
Yes.
talking about it. It's just very real and such a, when Julia Roberts says at the end of the movie, the fame is not a real, I'm just a girl. That whole
Yeah.
famous line. We won't get into that yet, but I mean, it shows true when she went to the. I don't want to jump ahead, but when the birthday party for the daughter, the sister.
Yes.
How unique that setting was compared to what her world was.
Mhm.
And yet I thought that she was fascinated by that and embraced it, and she wanted it. But the writing to set all that up and the tone and the acting was just so likable. Enjoyable, it was just comforting, I guess. But I think they did a fantastic job in all aspects of it, from writing, creative, directing, casting, producing of it, editing. Everything was just superb.
Yeah, I really, and it's interesting. You can't help but watch it and kind of wonder how much of this character of Anna, played by Roberts, how much of it is actually Roberts herself. But in reading and reading the background of this movie, they wanted Grant and Julia Roberts from the get-go, but both of them talked about how much they connected to the script. But you can't help, even though she's maybe not exactly like Anna, you can't help that you're kind of getting this inside look to how she feels, because at this point she's been a star for a long time. But you can feel like some of probably being a celebrity for such a long time, how that's kind of caught up to her as far as, especially where it's revealed that these, pictures that she took when she was younger, kind of, she's basically starting to get a little, not cynical is not the right word, but, exhausted by her lifestyle and probably, kind of looking for other things in life. It's the job sounds more stressful than glamorous, I think, for sure.
Well, the scene in the hotel room when her boyfriend shows up,
Yeah,
that was a
played by Alec
contrast.
Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin, who was a surprise to her that he was there. That showed the inauthenticity of what that world is like, the arrogance of that world is like, contrasting to where she had just spent the last 24 hours in the scene of the movie, was such a contrast of Hollywood and Notting Hill.
Yes.
And, you could just see that I think her heart longed for the reality and the authenticity of the simple life, basically,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I couldn't help but wonder while watching it too. I think you almost forget about it, but I think Hugh Grant does a really good job of like playing someone who's like completely foreign to this world, as if Hugh Grant hasn't grown up being an actor all his life. I mean,
Really?
I think he really does, especially, towards the end where he goes on that movie set and he's like, oh, these headphones, or whatever like that. And he does a really good job where you believe that he's not just as famous.
Very believable.
Yeah.
Every part of it. Every
Yeah.
part of it was very believable.
Oh yeah.
I love the scene when she comes into the bookstore for the first time, and then the guy in the back room is kind of trying to lift a book.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
the graciousness that he had with the supposed thief trying to steal a book,
Yes.
was just wow, unheard of. And then her response to it, we'll get into it, I guess, but there was a lot about it that I really liked. I kept coming up that word authentic and believable and enjoyable and very not over the top. Not over the top.
Right. We laughed about while watching it. Not only, I would say sadly now it's hard for bookstores to be successful in today's world, but to have a bookstore that's completely niched to be a travel bookstore. Maybe that's the thing that really outdates this movie the most.
Well, just having a bookstore, just seeing a bookstore is almost
right. Like, yeah. I can't
his
imagine.
sister worked at a record store.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think a big thing, and you made hint of this scene where they go to his sister's birthday party, but I think especially seeing Four Weddings and a Funeral before this movie, and what I liked so much about that movie that also plays in this movie, it's just the supporting cast that's around Grant and Roberts, and so these group of friends that Grant's character William Thacker has is the extremely, I think, the strongest element of the story that makes it so good is there, the different personalities in his group of family and friends, but also, they basically act as a surrogate, for the audience, that like how their reactions are, we learn everything about Julia Roberts' character, Anna, just through their reactions to her, even these people who may not, watch movies all the time or whatever, how they just, as soon as they see her, recognize who she is, except his one brother who talks to her like, just like a normal person. But I just the community that's behind Grant's character. I mean, that's almost, it sounds dumb to say without them in this movie, but I really think what makes a successful rom-com is the supporting cast. And yes. I mean, without them in this movie, it would, I wouldn't think it would be as successful.
Oh, I agree. Some of the highlight moments in looking back over it were those scenes, whether, it's the first time they all meet, whether they are responding to the response that she gave him or he gave her when she asked about him at the inn, and they're in the restaurant, that scene and how they went chasing down toward the end. I won't give away things, but
you can give away things. I mean, this movie is we can have a
okay.
spoiler-free discussion about this movie. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a scene when they first meet. It's hilarious because some of them recognize her and they freak out completely, and then they have dinner together, and that whole the last brownie.
Well, at least I get the last brownie, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think you get it.
Well, wait, what about me?
I'm sorry. You think you deserve the brownie?
Well, a shot at it at least, huh?
All right, well, you'll have to prove it. I mean, this is a very, very good brownie, and I'm going to fight for it.
Yes.
Thing they do where they go in the round, tell me who's in the worst case, who's the biggest loser, I guess, and they get the last brownie. That was kind of cool and unique. And then when he rejects her toward the end, and then he's telling their friends about it in the restaurant later, and they're all kind of giving him a little pump up that you did the right thing, and then all of a sudden they realize he tells them what she said.
Yeah.
Tell them that line.
Oh yeah. I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. Now I can't quite have the gravitas that Roberts has in delivering that line.
Wasn't that magical? It really was.
Yeah.
And then he shares that with them, and they all just kind of the facial expressions when they realize what he did, and he realized what he did, and then his roommate, who's the funniest character ever, who had
Spike,
called him a daft prick.
Yeah. Even the guy who's like the most clueless, of all his friends is like immediately like, what have you done?
Yeah. It was cool. And then that was the whole ensemble, how they ran off. And one thing that stood out to me, Hugh Grant's first girlfriend, who left, or they broke up. They were best friends, and she ended up marrying their another best friend. So they're a three friends that love each other still to this day. She had gotten into an accident, and she's in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So her whole character's in a wheelchair. Well, as they're running away to go try to run down Julia Roberts toward the end of the movie, they're jumping into a car to go, get to the hotel quick enough. And there's a scene where she's on the sidewalk, and the husband says, I forget her name. Where's so-and-so? She's not going to go. Well, like crap, she's not going. Get in the back seat. He jumps out of the car, runs over, picks her up out of the wheelchair, puts her in the car, and they run together. And then there's another scene in the house where they're all saying goodbyes and everyone's leaving. And Grant's going to spend the night on the couch. And then they're going to go to bed together, the husband and wife, and they go upstairs. Instead of her, did you see the stairway? They've got the chair that can, electric chair, and says he picks her up and carries her up the stairs. Yes. We all were taken back by those two moments, how thoughtful that was and how special that was. And just another part of that camaraderie that I think Julia Roberts captured earlier on. Goes, I want this. I want this. When they were in the park and they read that, you saw on the park bench, the caption where the husband and wife had sat on that park bench for all those years.
Yes.
And she said the line, people really do spend their life together or something like that.
Yeah.
I think she just saw the realness of their little world in Notting Hill compared to the facade of what Hollywood represents,
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. The ensemble casting was brilliant.
Yeah. I'm going off a little bit here, but you talking just now kind of made me think about this. But, I would say you were definitely, we all want to be successful in life, but, you talked a little bit about your background and your musical career. You were certainly pursuing fame of some sort. That's fair to say, right? And so
for sure, I'm going to be a rock star for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's a little funny as you get older, not that I ever wanted this, but I remember one of my best friends, he always talked about how he, like in our 20s, wanted to be on The Real World or whatever, this like pursuit of fame. And then you get to like, at least the age I am now, and it's like, oh, there's absolutely no way I would want to be, famous or that sort of thing. But could you, I think a lot of maybe actresses like, Julia Roberts, I really can't speak for them, nor do they need me on this podcast to do that. But I really liked how you could see how maybe early on where you pursue such things, and she is in this world that she's gone so, far away from this reality that William Thacker lives in. I can see how when you get to a certain point where you're just like, yeah, you really crave those things. So all that to say, is there a part of you that's, you mentioned, losing on Star Search, but I mean, just your simpler life now, is that, does that make sense where I'm going with? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to, I was playing music throughout growing up all of my years, and I always wanted to be a rock star. I played in a band with my cousin. He and I, started that, and that was our joy. That's what we wanted to do. And we got really, really close. I mean, comparatively to a typical band, we had made it past that first or second level and trying to get into that, top end. I remember when we got our record deal, our label was telling us, okay, you guys have been, quote unquote, the guys in Texas in the Southwest, but now Rick Springfield and Bryan Adams and Loverboy, they're your competition. And that was a slap in the face going, oh my gosh, this is reality. This is a completely different world. And we got to open up for a lot of bands, but we never got that full amount of fame. Yet I met my wife during those latter part of the days before we really got all the big fame going on. And had we won Star Search, Sawyer Brown, who beat us, they still played to this day. They're still a band to this day. And I probably would not have met my wife had we won, because I met her after that part. And so I know that would have changed my life greatly, for sure. And I thought I knew a lot about the world of full-time musician because we did it for 6 years, until I started doing television shows about famous artists on the road and going out, spending, 5 days with Trisha Yearwood or Travis Tritt or George Jones, or getting to interview Paul McCartney. All these things that happen were to a point where, wow, this is amazingly cool, but I wouldn't want to do this full time all the time. I get to go home and see my wife and my kids and hang out with my dog, and things like that. So yeah, I could see how that would be a really difficult thing. I'd love to change my paycheck in my bank account, with,
of course,
and my multiple houses all over, across the world. But no, God had a plan, and I wouldn't change anything. I love my family. I love what God has brought into our life, and so no, I wouldn't want to change anything.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit of stardom,
maybe some things here or there. Yeah. Going into we're going to kind of, I think, just kind of blend all these together in so much as sections. But one of my favorite scenes, and you kind of just mentioned it. And one of my favorite scenes is the press junket scene that he first goes to, and it has to fake being a reporter for Horses and Hounds. But I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this movie is so good to talk to Robin about." I just hadn't even really thought about it, because I think probably if you haven't seen this movie in a long time, Notting Hill, we just mentioned the most famous quote. I mean, you really do remember more of the kind of just the love story, really, but I think you forget about all this, like, kind of. I had completely forgot about this press junket scene, which it really it plays out a whole. It's pretty long, and anyway, I love that scene. It's just so funny. But could you kind of connect with it a little bit? As you mentioned, you've interviewed a lot of people in your life. You've interviewed a lot of celebrities, but I connected. I have not interviewed as many people as you have, but I totally connected with, maybe not seeing the movie he's asking questions about, but just kind of stumbling when you don't quite know what question to ask. I don't know if you could relate to that scene at all.
Well, I can relate to that scene in a different way. I mean, I wrote the whole ideas of our show, so I was very, very, very knowledgeable about everything. But my executive producer, my mentor, who taught me everything I know, we were the co-interviewers, and so I would feed Bill the information prior to us. I mean, we're on the plane going, to meet with the team, and we would be on the road with these acts during Full Access on tour. We would be on the road with the act for 3 days, and cameras are rolling virtually 24/7, and it's a docu-reality series. So we would have a prime interview with the artist, and then multiple secondary interviews along the way. But I'm feeding Bill all of the content and all the details, and I have scripts and so forth, and we're bantering back and forth. But I could sometimes see him going down a lane that was not really correct, if so, to the point. And cameras are rolling all the time, so I would jump in a little bit and kind of bring something up, and it would kind of pique his memory. And he was so sharp, he would jump right back in on it. But the funny thing about this with Hugh Grant, is that this junket is, he doesn't know he's coming to this interview. It's Julia Roberts is the star of a movie, and all these writers come together, and they get like 5 minutes with the star, and they parade them through the time together quickly, so everyone can get a soundbite from them. And he's thinking that she just wants to see him after having a kind of a semi fallout, or maybe the first meeting a few days ago. And so he's surprised by it. And so he gets there, and he realizes there's a guy walking down the hall with him, and wondering why he's walking down the hall of his hotel, and he gets in there, and he realizes, okay, this is an interview, and I don't know anything about it. And he didn't see the movie. They were going to ask about the movie. And he gets in there, and they say, okay, so what magazine are you with? He has no idea. The guy had just mentioned some, famous movie magazine, and he sees a magazine over in the little bin where they had all the magazines, and said Horse and Hounds. So he just says, I'm with Horse and Hounds. Okay, come on in. And he gets in there, and he knows nothing about it. So he's asking, well, did you have any horses in your movie? And what were those scenes like? Well, no, we really didn't, because, well, as you know, it was a space movie. Oh, that's yes. But would you have had one if you were not in the space or something? But yeah, it was totally clueless. So I haven't been that bad, but it's been close a couple of times.
Yeah. What I liked about that scene was, we get the idea, and, he does get to see Anna, and they get to talk a little bit before he's ushered off into these other rooms. And I feel like there's something in me that thinks that movies now would go on to another scene. But the fact that they play out these, we spend some time as he essentially spends the day there. And I liked that, not that this movie is necessarily a realistic story, but it feels like it could be realistic. And I think it's because of these moments where I think realistically, if he was ushered in like that, he would literally be stuck there all day. And they make the most out of these moments.
Those junkets are actually real. That's how they really do it. But the fact, to your point, the fact that they kept him in that line, going to another, interview, and he didn't see the movie at all, and he's totally clueless. That's a great question, a great point. I wonder why they did that, because I remember the second time that I watched it, or the most recent time I watched it, was I thought it was over, but it was a little not awkward, but I think maybe the point was just to show him how out of touch he is to what Hollywood is. He's a bookstore owner in a little, village of Notting Hill in London. Yeah. So maybe that was the point, but that's a good observation, because it really didn't need to be in there unless you just wanted to cement the, oddity of why he's in her world.
Yeah. And also I think it really pays off almost, her character. I mean, and they don't say it. I think a lot that pays off in this movie, or the things that aren't said, is that I think, the interest maybe clicks more to the fact that she realizes like he's stuck around that much all day. And I really appreciate her performance, because in this movie, because the way she's slowly becomes more vulnerable throughout the film. But I love how she has the gravitas of, being this Hollywood star. And it's always kind of funny because it is Julia Roberts. But, for the certainly most of the first half of this film, she plays just on her celebrity. She doesn't say much, when she walks into the room. She always kind of lets other people kind of stumble over her. Like she just has command of the room. And I really think, you really feel that totally. So
I love one line in that section. The whole surreal but nice comment that happened early on, and booking things, that was cool. But in the interview in the junket, one of the actually her producer, I think, or handler, it kind of steps in and out of the room several times and gives them a little moment of intimacy, of privacy. And she's asking him a question about, I may be able to stay over a day or so. Wonder, if that would be possible to see, or something to that effect. But I wrote down the line that I love. I forgot how it was set up. She said, asked him a question. So what do you think about all of this? And he said something to the point that it's like a dream. And she goes, well, if you were in this dream, what would you do next? And I wrote it down. He goes, well, if it was a dream and I could do this because it is a dream, I would change my personality. And then I'd walk over to the girl and I would kiss the girl. And then the guy the handler walks in and kind of interrupts the moment and then walks back out. And maybe there's a cut there where I would walk over, and I don't remember if they cut there and he came in and then he responded, kissed the girl afterwards or something. But that was a tender moment. That was a cool little scene,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned it, just the sister's birthday party scene. I mean, that scene, how it all plays out, and the emotional ups and downs, both touching moments and the humor, the brownie, just amazing. Just it's so good. And I think also just the time where they, she's hiding out in his flat. And those scenes that they have, how they, she's reading lines to him, and just those moments they have, and how it just comes, completely crashing down, but still staying, still keeping the humor in mind, with his roommate Spike, who poses for the camera and his underwear. So good.
Movie musings.
I know you pretty well, so a lot of these, certainly this first one, is kind of a setup for you. But Robin, I was going to ask you, who is the most famous person you've met?
Nathan Chandler.
Yeah, right.
The host of the podcast.
No, you mentioned it. You mentioned it already, but I just want to let you know, I tell your story to other people all the time about who I hope is your number one.
Yeah, it's Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
no
amazing.
Doubt. No doubt. It was an incredible experience in so many ways. You want me to tell the story or just answer that question?
Oh, what's a quick snippet of it? Yeah, no, don't tell the whole story, but I want somebody to book you for a speaking gig to actually hear the whole story. But overall, like essentially all the good stories you hear about him, you can vouch for that.
100%. I just a quick. You can't deny that Paul McCartney is a rock star. He's Sir Paul McCartney. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He's one of the best songwriters. He's sold more albums, blah, blah, blah. He's a rock star. But we had an opportunity to experience an interview with him. And while we were doing this documentary on the life of Buddy Holly, and the Crickets, he hosts a big special every year in September in London, and a celebration for Buddy Holly. And all these rockers come over. So we got to interview him and spend time with him. He was so nice and so gracious to our team. He was spent, typically in the world of interviewing celebrities, you get this kind of junket kind of situation where you go in, you got 5 minutes with someone, and that's it. Well, in our world, we were doing docu-reality series, so we were with the artists, for days on end. And I thought with Paul McCartney, we'd get 5 minutes, kind of quick little touch it thing, because he was sponsoring the Buddy Holly event, and we're doing this documentary on Buddy Holly. And yet he sat down and was so gracious. He asked me to introduce the team to him. I did. I gave a little bit of background about each guy, and he remembered it and he repeated it back to them. And he was so fun and gracious. And I was nervous. You can tell I talk fast. He calmed me down. He was asking me, "Okay, Robin, tell me about this thing you're doing with Buddy Holly, the special. Tell me what you're doing." And I did, and he was answered all these questions. It was just amazing. And we got invited back to go hang out with him backstage after the show that night. And it was just so impressive how he made it about us. I'm one that always says, put others first, make it about them. And my dad used to tell me, you do that enough times and you'll never need a friend when you're in need, because you'll have friends. And so he ingratiated himself so much to us. He was like, wow, a real true rock star in every sense of the word. So yeah, I'm a major Paul McCartney fan, music and personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if I was working with you when this happened, but I got to essentially, it wasn't a press junket like in this movie where you get ushered to room to room to room, but I got an opportunity to meet and I say interview very loosely Jason Schwartzman, who's an actor. He's been in a lot of Wes Anderson films, but I got this opportunity. Very, very nice. My friend Matt Mungle, who's been on the show before, he allowed me this opportunity, but it was me and 3 other really like legit reporters. Like I was sitting there going like, I don't know why I'm here really. And we meet Jason.
I felt that way.
Yeah, we meet Jason Schwartzman out in the courtyard. He was a little late, but like so nice, like very apologetic. And we probably sat there with him for about an hour. And honestly, I didn't say a word. I just listened the whole time but I got one question in and I felt like it was a good question and he answered it. And I was like, all right, I'm good. Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah. But so I haven't had as many brushes with famous people as you have, but I always like to tell that story because he was a extremely tremendously nice guy. So
That's cool.
Yeah. So in this movie, a lot kind of centers around this piece of artwork that William Thatcher has in his living room, and it comes back to play later when she gives him a gift. And so I was wondering, do you have a favorite artist or a work of art that you really appreciate or cherish? It may not be from a favorite artist or a famous artist.
You know, I like I said, I did a documentary for Billy Graham on the Sunrise of Christianity. So I got to go to the Holy Land for one time with him, and I've been back twice before. We've got some icons that represent the life of Christ direct from the Holy Lands, and some monasteries that we got to go visit during that period of time. Amazing experience, amazing time, and to understand the reality of Christianity from what we see in contemporary just churches today and everything else. And we have some really beautiful iconography that Elizabeth particularly has really an eye for, that we love, and we have them in our house, and they're stunning. But from regular, art, not really. I mean, we just got a lot of family photos, and I've got some guitar pictures and stuff hanging on the wall. But the iconography, I think, is probably the most things of these, I mean, stunningly beautiful icons. And just getting to go to so many of these locations in the Holy Lands and to see the majesty of what they've done. I mean, it's stunning. I mean, it's amazing. But no, not that I have a piece that I would sell or that I would like, gosh, come look at this beautiful thing, except these icons.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of amazing artists in my family. So my dad, and they're all like different styles. And so we have artwork from my dad, from my sister, from my mother-in-law. And so, we're very fortunate to have, we get to display a lot of those, probably so much so we're running out of wall space around here in my house, but
cool.
So a little less serious question. Have you ever had a bad roommate before? And hopefully Elizabeth is not your answer.
No, uh, I really haven't. I had a weird roommate, which actually turned out to be a good thing for me. My freshman year at Baylor, we both went to Baylor, lived in Penland Hall, and this
What floor
guy,
did you live on?
third floor,
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just
third
wondering.
floor. Yeah, Herb was my roommate. He was from uh, East Texas, and we had a really good corner of our hall down there. And for some reason, a bunch of us, they said, let's put some people in office. So we ran for president, vice president, and secretary treasurer in our little area of our wing. And he got president, I got vice president, and the guy, Tim Brand, across the hall got secretary treasurer. So we kind of, our little end of the corner ran the freshman year that year. But Herb transferred in the middle of the semester, the next semester, and went to A&M. So I became the president, and we had an empty spot as vice president. So that was the weirdest kind of thing, that he had this position. Not that it meant anything. It didn't mean diddly squat. We didn't do anything, and we just go to some meetings. But the guy's the president of the freshman class, and he leaves in the middle of the semester. He was kind of an oddball. But no, I don't remember anybody else that was weird or bad.
Yeah.
Nothing like this guy in the movie. Golly.
Yeah. Well, I had more of a roommate situation than necessarily the personalities, but my sophomore year, I lived with 3 other guys. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and thankfully the guy I shared a room with, we were great. I was also great with the other 2 guys. But those 2 other guys that shared a room despised each other, hated each other. And so much so that one of them refused to be in the same room. So he would always sleep downstairs on the couch of our living room. So like, and I think he decided to take an off semester. So he worked like late at night. So he was like an all night guy, sleep all day type of person. And so it always just messed with your vibe, because you walk into your main living room area and he's asleep on the couch. But it was horrible. It was just the way they wouldn't talk to each other, and then dishes weren't ever done. It was a mess. So anyway, it's almost like I would take Spike, I think, over over that situation.
I was just about to ask you, would you live with Spike? You would live with him? Oh my goodness.
Well, I don't know.
Rom-com rankings.
So the first category I have is the romantic chemistry between the leads. So what is your ranking between the chemistry between Grant and Roberts here?
Because they were conflicting a lot of ways, you think maybe they don't have chemistry. But obviously she was taken back by him. Obviously he knew who she was when she walked into the bookstore. He was but very calm and very cool. Explain how you mean that.
Well, I mean, just you look at, just couples, you look at them and you're like, oh, they have it. I would say even maybe early, like when people are, even dating early on in their stages, like, it's just like, I know some of the best friends in my life, when they finally met the person that they ended up marrying, most of them, I would say, when I saw them, I was like, yep, that's the person for them. So just, you have to have good chemistry between the actors for a romantic comedy to be successful.
Yeah. What happened at the end, them coming together, definitely says that they've got great chemistry. Definitely. They were soulmates at that point in my mind. And that scene in the park where you see the first time they break into the park and they on the bench, they see that emblem there where a husband and wife sat next to her. The wife sat there and the husband sat there all these years. They passed away, and that's their dedicated bench. And then at the end, that's where they end up.
Yeah.
He's reading a book. She's laying back or something, and that was their place. So the chemistry I thought was
with the baby bump.
With the baby bump, yes,
right,
so
yeah.
That cemented it for me in that idea. So I thought they were great. I thought they would be a 5.
Okay, good. Okay. I didn't know, you seemed a little shaky there. So I would say that if you hadn't seen this movie and you just take the image of Julia Roberts and you take the image of Hugh Grant, they're probably not people that you would put together. But I think in this movie, it just works tremendously. And I made reference to it, but the whole scene where they just hanging out in his flat, and because they start getting to this level of comfort that you can only truly get with their soulmate. And so, I give them 5 hearts as well. I don't think we've kind of touched on this a lot, but the best friend aspect, kind of as I talked about earlier with Richard Curtis films, he's known for kind of building these huge supporting cast of characters. So I think a lot of people fall into this role, as the person that, solo person or a group of friends that supports the main protagonist through this romantic journey. But what do you give this group of fellows here, and madams, I guess?
In this movie, this particular movie?
Yes.
Oh, definitely a 5.
Yeah, me as well.
Definitely a 5.
Yeah, I think we touched on that a lot. I don't think we have to get further into this, but I did find this quote from the director, which I don't know the details, but I saw that he actually passed away in 2021. But Roger Michelle, he said the casting of these characters, Will's friends, was rather like assembling a family. He explained that when you're casting a cable of friends, you have to cast a balance of qualities, of types, and of sensibilities. They were the jigsaw that had to be put together all in one go. And I think we've got a very good variety of people who can realistically still live in the same world. I mean, that
Perfect.
quote, yeah, it just perfectly sums that up. Yeah.
That jigsaw, well, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. The third component is the soundtrack. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the soundtrack or not.
No, I haven't. I liked what I hear. I didn't think of this movie as a soundtrack movie.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Footloose or Dirty Dancing or,
Yeah, certainly.
Top Gun or anything like that. But I enjoyed it. I can't even think about it. Why not really?
Yeah. So, I do think so. I would say the big.
I
song,
tell you what I do. Ain't No Sunshine When You're Gone. I love that. Ain't No Sunshine. Yeah. I love that scene when the transition from season to season to season to season. That was a very great representation of time. That's a very common way of doing that. But Ain't No Sunshine was playing in the background, and you're seeing him, stroll through the marketplace. That was a real good use of music. I can't remember other pieces necessarily, but I do remember that one.
Yeah, so we listened to the soundtrack kind of after the movie, but it plays big during the chase scene towards the end. But "Give Me Some Lovin'" by the Spencer Davis group, it plays. Yep. There's an Elvis Costello song at the beginning called "She." But in pure like late '90s form, there's also a song by 98 Degrees on this Nick Lachey's boy band. Shania Twain has a song on this. So and
I didn't know that.
Famously, the song "When You Say Nothing at All" is kind of the standout, and that's the song that plays when they go into that garden for the first time and hop the fence. And if you're like Whitney and I, that song, I think that song means something to our generation. It was like the ultimate slow dance song, like in college and stuff like that. It's Ronan.
Oh, the words of that and the intent of that is so good. I'm comfortable with you no matter what. When you say nothing at all, it's just good.
Yeah, it's good. But as we were just starting to dissect those lyrics, when he was like, it's kind of rude if you think about it.
Oh, really?
Just like, no, I love you when you're not talking. But I gave it, we listened to it. There are some like tremendous standouts on the soundtrack. Ain't No Sunshine, like as you mentioned, also with how it's used in the scene, like amazing song. I've always loved that. So the soundtrack has some really good songs, but there's a couple in there that kind of like this 98 Degrees song, even though some people will recognize it. It's kind of got some okay songs as well. So I gave it 3.5, but I don't know if you can give it a fair rating because you didn't.
Yeah, I really can. I mean, I'll go with you 3.5 because I couldn't remember that. So that says a lot, I guess, in some ways.
Yes.
I was captivated more with the storyline and their acting versus the music. The Ain't No Sunshine is really one that stands out the most, and that was great how they did that. So I'll give it a 3.5 as well.
Okay, awesome. Fourth category is the chase scene or the declaration of love. I'll go ahead and say I gave this 5 hearts. Winnie and I, we absolutely love this. For some reason, I mean, as it played out, I started to remember it. But you mentioned it, like how they hop in the car and then he goes and gets his wife to make sure she's with them, and then how they go into the hotel lobby and that the front desk guy kind of gives them the hint to, you know, where they're at, and the music, and also just the end scene with, you know, now we're not this like individual room, right? Where like as in the most public space you can get. I love that it's a callback to this press junket scene, you know, where it was these individual rooms. Now we're in this huge hotel ballroom, you know, and he's got to ask these questions in front of her, and how it just all, you know, calls back to one another. I absolutely love it. So I gave it 5 hearts. I don't know if you felt as strongly as I did.
I would 100% agree to that. And if you noticed the nuance of their eye contact at the very, very, very end, when she first saw him after the last question, and she saw him and she lit up, and he asked the question that played off the other reporter's question, and then she was like, you know, interested. So he's not here to bash me. He's here to talk to me. And then she reaches over to her handler and says to ask that question again. Just their connection. When I think it was when he asked her the question, would you reconsider your answer to Mr. Thacker, or whatever his last name is? And he kind of lifted his eyebrows, you know, a little bit like that, and kind of acknowledged, like, yes. And then when she hesitated and then said yes, I got chills. It was just one of those moments where, oh my gosh, this is working. So yeah, that for sure. And you cannot not go to the main line in my mind. You know, I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love me, you know, that moment. And then when he repeated that moment in the restaurant with the friends.
Yes.
I mean, I know she's an actress and all that, so she can deliver a line, but she said she might be as famous as it can be, but also that she was just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her.
And then you see the expression of all the people, like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was heavy. To somebody be that vulnerable, someone of her stature to be that vulnerable to you, Mr. Low Life bookstore owner guy that we love to death, but oh my gosh, and you said no. And then they all reveal, go, you screwed up. So that's when the chase scene happens, and it's so refreshing. But those moments were iconic in my mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. The last category, we usually don't dissect it too much, but the rewatchability factor of this movie, how do you rank that?
Proven it. I've watched it 4 or 5 times.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
5.
Yeah, I give it 5 hearts as well. Almost to the fact, us rewatching it, you know, now I was like, oh my gosh, it's been way too long since I've seen this movie. So, yeah, it's definitely one. Hallie sat down and watched this movie with us, and she really liked it a lot. And you can tell kind of when she's into it or when she's not, and she really liked it a lot.
Recommendations.
Is there anything you are watching or listening to or reading that you've been telling other people about?
Just, you know, television, you mentioned that earlier. 24, I love 24, always do. I've watched it several times. Watched West Wing several times. The whole series. If you haven't watched any of those things, they're brilliant. Aaron Sorkin is the writer behind that. He's incredible. And I loved the from a technical standpoint, the steady cam movement of all the camera action, all the character action, the pithy conversation. It's just constant. Well, West Wing does that perfectly. 24 did that perfectly. There's a show Jeff Daniels was on, The Newsroom.
Yeah.
Did you ever see The Newsroom?
I saw most of the first season.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved that show a lot. And Emma and I watched, my youngest daughter, we watched Castle and The Rookie.
Okay.
We have followed what's his name in that, and we love both of those. And the most recent thing I've watched, and I don't watch a lot of television anymore. I just watched Netflix a couple of times.
Yeah.
Is Blacklist. Did you ever see Blacklist?
No, I didn't.
It's espionage type of show, and I like that. It gets you going pretty strong. It's kind of relevant to a lot of the crap that's going on in our world today about all these private divisions of security and police, and it's interesting, but it gets pretty dark sometimes. So
Yeah.
not necessarily a family viewing. But Castle and The Rookie are really good, and if you can watch The Newsroom, that would be great. And did you ever see Sunset Strip? What is it? 66 Sunset Strip?
Yeah.
Kind of a play on Saturday Night Live. That was a great show as well.
Yeah. Aaron Sorkin, he's the man. So,
He's brilliant, man. I love everything he's done.
Yeah.
Hey, what did he do? The comedy sports night or something as well?
Yeah, Sports Night's amazing. Yeah. So for my recommendation, I was a little late on the train to this one, but I didn't catch it in theater, but it's one of the more successful films from this year. But it just came out on Prime Video. But I watched Creed 3. Have you seen any of the Creed movies with Michael B. Jordan?
No, I saw the Rocky stuff, but not Creed.
Yeah, so the first one is really, really good. I didn't see the second one, but I had heard a lot of good things about this third one, this third installment, and so I watched it. I would say that I didn't feel like not seeing the second one. It kind of fills in the gap. So I feel like if you're not super familiar, but I wouldn't say the best movie ever, but it's pretty entertaining. And it's probably been a while. Yeah, it's probably been a while since I've seen a good sports film in a while. I'm sure there's some out there or whatever. Michael B. Jordan, who plays Creed, also he directed this movie, and he does a really good job. And there's some really cool things that they do, especially in the boxing scenes, that are really good. It's got some sports cliches, like there's not, like most Rocky films, right? You know where it's going a lot of the times. But anyway,
those are fun though.
Yeah, and if you have Prime Video, it's a kind of one of the bigger movies from this year. You can now, watch it for free. So that's my recommendation. Well, at the time of this recording, I'm actually doing this a little bit early, so I don't quite know what we'll cover next. But make sure you're following all our social media accounts where we make announcements about our upcoming shows and schedule. As always, check out moviesairlife.com for episode reviews and more. If you love this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. This really helps us with finding new listeners. And Robin, thanks again for coming onto the podcast. And I kind of like that I made you a little uncomfortable making you talk about a movie. And
I had to go back and kind of pick my brain a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anything, I feel like I provided your family with a good viewing experience. So I just brought you guys closer together, I think.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thanks again to everybody for listening, and good luck on getting the last brownie.